welcome back to the Nonprofit Leadership Studio. I hope everyone's doing very well. Another great guest tonight. We have Wafa Abdin, and Wafa is the head of the Cabrini Legal Services Center over at Catholic Charities. Wafa, you do a lot of great work. Actually, your official title is like Vice President of Catholic Charities.
Yes.
Yeah. But you do a lot of great work in regards refugees, immigration, and so I think we have a sort of a wealth of opportunity to talk about your leadership as you do that. And I want to thank everyone for being here. Wafa is very special to me, and we were just talking about this early on. About 10 years ago, maybe 11 years ago, some of you know me for my work in the fight against trafficking, and Wafa was the one who came to me and said, hey, there's this thing called human trafficking that no one knows anything about, and that's what launched me and Children at Risk to do a lot of our work that's in human trafficking. So thank you very much for that. And thanks for being here, Wafa.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and it's been exciting to watch how much your organization has done in that. I mean, all the advocacy and all the work that has been done. If I played a role in it, it makes me really absolutely happy.
And I don't, I think the last count is we've passed 54 pieces of legislation in the fight against trafficking.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. So Wafa, I want to get into your background and stuff, but first, you're writing the book, the Wafa Abdin book on leadership. What are some of the chapters? What do they look like for you?
I mean, part of how I kind of developed my leadership was really by doing, in a way.
Yeah.
So I did not really study it in a sense. And I actually, I did not know that's where I wanted to be. Because eventually, initially when I started, I was very excited about my work as an attorney who is representing clients one-on-one.
Yeah.
And somehow it seems I would be offered, different roles that required leadership. So I think maybe what I would like to start first by understanding what does leadership really mean and what makes a good leader. And also talk about some of maybe the things that through my journey I've learned have worked. And what did not work. These are kind of mostly the things I would think of.
When you think about that journey, what has worked for you?
So I think initially what really brought me where I am was my commitment and passion for the work. So I went to law school because I wanted to help immigrants who do not have language and understand the system and cannot pay private attorneys. That's kind of really what I wanted to do. I also, being someone who originally is Palestinian in terms of my family roots, and we're the oldest refugees in the world. So I knew I couldn't do much for them, but I wanted to really help people who are in the same kind of, face the same difficulties. So that's, I mean, to me, it was never just a job. It was really a calling of some kind that that's what I wanted to do. And I thought what I did also, I felt that I needed, if I wanted to lead, I need to lead by example.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be able to help people kind of transform their thinking and really approach work. Not, I'm coming here to work to do this. It just look at what is it that we are doing, how much we change people's lives, and what more we can do. So that's kind of when I think of my journey. I think of the things that really matter when I come every day to work. And sometimes there are challenges, like, you lose staff, all kinds of things that happen. And what sustains me always is that I know where I want to be and what I want to do. And I, try very hard to kind of make the people who work with me kind of share this vision and have their own that really sustains them too.
You're someone who wanted to change the world and help people, and that's what you're doing. But yet you fall into this area that in this day and age, today, as we speak, is sort of politically very edgy, right? I mean, and here you are, you're a Muslim woman, you're running a refugee and immigration service. You're getting immigrants from all over the world in a country that, at least a portion of the country, is seemingly hesitant about whether we should be doing that. How do you lead through that, and how do you lead your staff as you see all of that come around you within the community?
Well, I mean, I also have a kind of a different, unique perspective than somebody who grew up here.
Yeah.
So when I came to this country, one of the things that I thought was really special, it's how much it really kind of embraced diversity.
Yeah.
And also the fact that anybody, it doesn't matter who they are, where they come from, if they work hard, and if, they can reach where they,
Charities, right?
they can reach where they want to reach.
Yeah.
And I mean, for me too, like when I think of when I first went to law school and I did not know about the system, I was freaking out. Will I ever find a job even? I didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
Like you always think you need to know people. I didn't know how to reach them. So it was, this country really, to me, stood for these principles.
Yeah.
The welcoming, the stranger, and also part of, my work with the Catholic organization that have the social justice as core of its work, as well as my own beliefs. So to me, I mean, sometimes, and this started not just now, I think, starting with September 11, you could see that there was a shift in how people think. And even in terms of laws, even though there was not a very huge change in actual laws, but the way they were interpreted, the way they were, kind of implemented really showed a great, this started this looking at people at different levels and all of that. So the first thing that happened, if you remember, Muslims, men had to register between, certain age when they, after they enter the country. So starting then, and to me, it was really sad because here I am in this, country that I'm very excited about, these principles. But I would say also that this stage is even harder. And it's harder for different reasons. First of all, refugees usually are the most, compelling cases.
Yep.
These are people who have suffered from persecution. They themselves has been, tortured. They've been through very difficult situation. And the U.S. historically has been the largest, kind of welcoming country for refugees. We usually, it's around 100,000 refugees who are allowed to kind of come into the country. We take between 70 to 80,000 a year. So it is kind of a very strong tradition here.
Yep.
And people really have been embracing it. And I believe that the refugees bring so much wealth and, enhance the lives here of people. So finding myself in a place where, it was very personal, but at the same time, I could not really deal with it as personal because, being a vice president in the Catholic Charities, we have contracts with the state. We, so I really, so there are a lot of, kind of, I would say conflicting, feelings and responsibilities. At one point, I'm this Muslim woman who's enraged about what is happening. I want to be advocating and I want my voice to be heard.
Yeah.
And I always see myself as the advocate. That's kind of something that has always been really what I believe has defined my approach to work. But then, if we have all these staff, these contracts really, so it's just kind of being able to really walk this very tightrope of, speaking the truth, being who I want to be and what I believe in, and at the same time, kind of doing what my main responsibility is.
You have about 40 attorneys that work for you, all doing this sort of really important work. How do you lead them? I mean, because these are all advocates, right? These are all people who've been taught to question authority, and they're happy to be doing the job that they're doing. Is it difficult to manage and to lead with this group?
Absolutely. I mean, I can tell you it's very difficult. And you really have, I think the fact that I'm an attorney helps a lot. So I see in them myself when I was younger. So I'm also the rebel. I'm also the one who advocated. So it really doesn't bother me when they do that, but I have to find creative way to channel it in the right way.
Yeah.
Because there are limited resources. There are sometimes laws that are very discriminatory, and the kids whether we're serving a kid or asylum seeker or an abused spouse, lots of times it's not fair at all. I mean, we don't get like certification from law enforcement. They are not able to really fit within the very narrow definition of refugee, or a kid who really doesn't, is very afraid to go back because of gangs, and they have been hurt. But at the same time, the law is so limiting when it comes to that, and very few cases are granted. So I mean, just kind of helping the attorneys to channel their, kind of energy and their excitement in a way that ultimately will benefit, the clients, while also maintaining relationships, because we're a big program, and we are in front of the immigration judges every day. I mean, for a huge number. So it's not like a private attorney. I can go and tell the judge what I want. I mean, you have to have zealous advocacy for your kids, but at the same time, I mean, we need to think of what if we ruin the whole, so there's a lot. So for me, and I also supervise, kind of refugee resettlement staff who are not attorneys, and I have a lot of paralegals. I mean, really, supervising an attorney is a different ball game, I would say. But I personally enjoy it. I mean, I really enjoy seeing how excited they are and how much they grow. Like when they first come, they think they know it all. And then once they start practicing, they learn, no, I don't. And I mean, with most of them, there's always this moment when they want to take a case that either that's not the type of case that we handle, or will take more of our resources. And I remember when I first started as being either leader or supervisor, I would tell them, no, that's not a good case, and then they would be really unhappy, and I became kind of the enemy. But now I learned. I let them take this first case, and I tell them, my evaluation of it and how it is, and then they learn through, their experience. Lots of times they come back, they want me to help them how to find a way not to continue. Well, at that point, I tell them, you're the attorney of record, it's your responsibility. Wow. So, but it's fun to really work with them, and I've seen many who I hired as interns or started out of law school, and now they are, supervisors or great attorneys, and all over the country.
And I know you've had some great people who've moved on that are in great jobs.
Absolutely.
You've known a lot of the great attorneys. I want to ask you about your board, right? So there's a board at Catholic Charities. I would guess that it's a relatively conservative board politically. We're in Texas after all, right? How do they react when you have some of these hot political issues? When our governor decided we're not going to take Syrian refugees, when he really had no power to do that, and you guys were in the middle of settling Syrian refugees. How does your board react to that?
Well, I mean, I agree with you that a lot of them are, conservative in certain, issues that are related to the Catholic, kind of values. But I find that because of the work we do and the stories we share with them, that we are able to get them to see that this is not right, this is not fair, and they are supportive of, serving our clients. And I also find that most of them are influential. They have really good connections. So they help us sometimes to resolve some of these issues without having to go into battle.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, really, and
so you engage your board a lot with this stuff.
We do a lot. I mean, and we try, I mean, like at every board meeting, we usually start with a mission, we call it a mission moment, where we bring either a client, or we share a story, or one of our either attorneys or, caseworkers. And we try to keep them really involved and understand the issues that we go through. So I remember once we received the first letter from, the commissioner at that time telling us that we cannot really settle refugees. I mean, we had a special session for the executive committee, and I was asked to kind of really tell them about the issues. And I felt that they were, feeling, what we felt, and that they were really engaged in trying to help us, get where we want to get.
Wow. When you think about nonprofits in Houston that are your big allies and that you see as other nonprofits, Catholic Charities is run very well. I've talked with Cynthia. We've had your director of development here. I mean, there's some great staff there. When you look at some of the partners in Houston that you feel, from your perspective, Wafa, that are very well run and that seem to be doing the right thing, what are some of the ones that come to mind for you?
I mean, I actually, and I'm not saying it because it's, I admire the way you run the, kind of children at risk. And because you also do something that, even though we're engaged in, it's not our main, focus.
Right.
So to me, it's really special to, to see how much you concentrate on the advocacy, legislature, and all of that. Yeah. Another organization that I think very highly of, and I really enjoy working with them, is the Houston Volunteer Lawyers.
Oh, yeah.
It is, I mean, the role that they play, and actually their the current, executive director had been really very good about even opening doors about immigration, because traditionally they don't handle any immigration cases. But we were able to develop, kind of partnerships with them while, so they announced the need for pro bono.
Yep.
And so we had the biggest pool ever in town, while at the same time we were able to handle the, kind of the mentoring and following up on the cases.
Wow.
So that's also another organization that, to me, that functions very differently than Catholic Charities, but I'm very excited to be working with them. And currently now, I'm working with a group. It's not actually an organization, it's the immigration collaboration. So 2 funders actually, and a group of us who practice immigration law. I mean, we kind of had a meeting, and I started by telling them how funders need to know more our needs, and that Houston is as diverse as other cities like New York. You have 5 organizations that are accredited, while there you have hundreds. Yeah. So I think, then there started this group, and we've been meeting, and we created a community plan, especially with all the things that were happening, like the talk about DACA and, the program DACA, and then when DAPA came, we felt that no one organization can meet the kind of the huge need that will happen if any of these programs happen. So we have been coordinating, and collaboration is a difficult thing.
It is.
I mean, it requires
it's wonderful when it works.
I mean, absolutely.
Yeah, but it's hard.
But it requires a lot of work for it to really produce what you want to produce.
Yeah. One of the interesting things for you, I would imagine, is that you hire attorneys, and they want to be, public interest attorneys, and they're very gung-ho about it. But they see their colleagues from school going off to big law firms, making 5 times more than them as starting salary. So what's the starting salary at a big firm these days? Is it?
Well, I mean, it really depends, but it could go to 100,000. I mean, 80, 90, and higher than that. I'm saying that just the regular when it's not.
Yeah.
So I mean, for us, I remember when I first started, we were paying our attorneys maybe 40,000 or 37. I mean, so it's. I'm always inspired by them. I mean, because some people think that we only hire those who can't find jobs, and that is true.
No, that's
not the truth at all.
When we post jobs for lawyers, we have so many applicants. I'm sure
and some of them are from Columbia or
Harvard,
some of the best Harvard, best universities. But that's really what they want to do. But at the same time, after a while, once they have families, I mean, they have bills, they have loans. So it's for me, that is the part that I kind of struggle, or always try and think of different ways how to make it better for them.
Yeah.
And that's why, again, not everybody stays for a long time. So I kind of learned that the way it will happen is that we have these young attorneys who come give us whatever, 2 years, 1 year, 3 years of their time.
Yeah.
They bring their enthusiasm and all of that, and afterwards they're going to go for other opportunities. But the good thing is there are few who, for whatever reason, that's really what they want to do.
Yeah.
And they have life circumstances that enables them to continue. I mean, financially.
Yeah.
So they end by becoming my supervisor. So that's kind of the way I deal with it.
And I always think it's very interesting how you have certainly we have people who are in big law firms and they say, well, I'd love to do this. And then they realize the salaries, and it's too hard for them to make that adjustment sometimes.
But I actually have 3 or 4 who made that adjustment.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, it's not an easy one. And some of them stay for a while and go back. But we've had several who really stayed. I think it really depends on what stage of their lives they're in, and whether there is another kind of salary that supports the family. So there are a lot of but it is really continues to be an issue, and it is something that it's one of my dreams to be able to kind of offer them more.
I know, right? So before I go to the Twitterverse to answer Twitter questions, I want to get just a brief idea from you, sort of your background. So you're Palestinian. Were you born in Jordan?
I was born in Amman, Jordan, and I went to actually a Catholic school, even though I was a Muslim.
Wow.
And the reason why, because they were the only schools that you could learn languages. So I started learning English and French from kindergarten, and that's kind of why my parents chose that for me. So I, became very interested in English literature. And I was very interested in the modern novel as it deals with the outsider, this idea of, and that's kind of, what I wanted to do is to kind of work in, continue to have a PhD in comparative studies. That was my plan for my life.
Do your undergraduate
I
work?
went my undergrad at the University of Jordan. So I had a degree in English literature and minor in business, which turned out not what I wanted to do. My dad wanted me to go to medical school, but that's really not what I wanted. So, and then I got married and we moved to Saudi Arabia. So I worked for 2 years before I got married with the Arab League. So it was an organization, and the first thing I worked was on a computer kind of terminology dictionary of kind, and I got to meet with people from all the Arab world. It was very hard for them to agree on a word in Arabic that covered the terminology. So it was really interesting. And I was the youngest and really new, and sometimes it ended by me deciding which word, because they could not agree on it. And then I got married. We moved to Saudi Arabia. My husband was a physician with Aramco. And it was a different kind of life altogether. But we lived on campus, and I could only work on campus. So I started teaching Arabic for adults. And I had, it was very interesting because I had like British and Irish students that, it was like a war zone in the classroom. And so we lived for 5 years and a half. Then we moved back to Jordan. There I went to work on my Master's for English, because it was part of my plan, and I finished all the coursework. At that time, my husband wanted to come here for hearing and balance disorders, so we came to the U.S. and for 2 years, and then that's when I kind of. When we decided to stay longer, we had a very difficult time getting our legal status. It was very expensive. It was very confusing. So that's when I decided, no, I don't want to go into, a PhD in English. I want to go to law school, and I want to help the people. Did you go to law
school here in Texas then?
Yes, in Houston, the University of Houston.
University of Houston, wow.
So, and I actually, it's a funny story because I decided I want to go to law school. I didn't know, what is required. So I went to a recruiter. She told me you have 3 weeks to go for the LSAT. And of course, people take courses. I have no idea. I brought a book from the library, sat down for 2 weeks, and did it.
And you got a great score.
I got a good score, and so it's really, so that's how I ended in law school.
Wow, very good. And was this your first job right out of law school, working at Catholic Charities?
I actually clerked for Gordon Kwan's, firm for, I would say, 8 to 9 months. And then I was offered the position at Catholic Charities as staff attorney. And
you were the only one at the first.
I was the only one there with 8 staff. And now once we hire everybody, we'll have close to 100.
Wow.
With 40 attorneys.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's something I'm really proud of.
Yeah, you should be.
And it's not just for me. I feel it's so needed for the community, and we're really, kind of meeting needs of people who have no other options.
Wow. So you ready for some of these student questions?
I could try.
Okay. This is interesting. Kelsey DePravo wants to know, Do you think it's important to remember where you started? A lot of people seem to lose sight of where they started, of their roots when they gain success. Is it something that,
I think
especially your job, I would think you would reflect?
I think it's very important. I mean, to tell you the truth, because that can be what grounds a person. I mean, because otherwise, sometimes, whether it's position or money, I mean, in nonprofit, that doesn't happen as often, but it's easy to lose sight of why you're doing the work. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's always important. And, one of the things I always remember, like when any of my attorneys are going, to apply somewhere else or try to get jobs, I always remember how I felt that I'm not sure I can ever find a job. I mean, back home, everybody knew my father. I've never applied for a job. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking, how can I do it here? And then when I look at, being freaking out not to find a job, how many people I hired and interviewed and saw them move to other things, it amazes me, but I never forget it.
Wow, very good. Janice Pender wants to know, she's asking about work-life balance. I have to tell you, Wafa, so many people that we interview here, when I ask about work-life balance, they just sort of start laughing because most nonprofit leaders don't have work-life balance, always thinking about work. Do you feel like you have a work-life balance?
Well, I can tell you it's really, most of the time I did not have work-life balance because, I mean, like for me, when I first started, I was the only attorney there. Yeah. And, so even though I was called staff attorney, in 2 months I became supervising attorney, in a year a director. But I had very little experience. So I had to really kind of work 70, 80 hours to just make up for what I didn't know and kind of research and worked very hard. And then, I thought like maybe when you get a position as a supervisor, you can delegate, that it's easier. I found it was harder. So, I mean, I would say for the first maybe 10, 12 years, there was no life balance at all. I mean, what really kind of sometimes saved the day is that I still had kids who had needs. So that's the only thing that for me kind of forced me sometimes into that. But then after they went to college, I just really became an workaholic. There was nothing. I mean, that became my life.
But you also love your work, right? I mean, that's part
and
of
that's kind of. But I mean, I can tell you, in the last few years, not that my hours of work are less, but I'm making a conscious effort to do things I enjoy, whether it's yoga, whether to create, to just kind of find joy, whether it's in my work or in my life. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important because if you don't do that, you get burned out. Yeah. And so, and to me, it was actually, I had to go through a surgery because I neglected myself for years. That was a wake-up call. Oh, wow. I mean, after that, I think I had a better kind of balance. But I mean, I can't claim it's something that I can maintain all the time. But I try very hard.
Yeah. Very good. Andrea Kirkpatrick wants to know, you talked a little bit about collaboration with other nonprofits. What are some of the challenges that one can expect when doing these collaborations?
Well, I mean, first of all, even though sometimes we might be doing the same kind of work, whether it's the approach or the vision or the mission could be different. So first, being able to find what is in common between, the two organizations. And then there's always, I mean, no matter, people think that nonprofits don't compete, they do. Yeah. I mean, they compete for resources, they compete for the, the people that they hire, and also for visibility and all kinds of things. Yeah. So it's finding a way between, yes, I am working for my organization, but at the same time, I'm here for the spirit of the group and trying to really find ways where we can work together. Mm-hmm. And there were times that I felt like people did not really meet me in that same place. Ultimately they made the choices that are good for them, and they did not care how that affected us. I also, as someone, I'm not the last decision maker. So sometimes also our organization would like to kind of put themselves in a certain place that requires we do something alone. But I've really worked very hard to find that common ground where we can work together. And sometimes it meant a lot of compromise. but
I also find that nonprofits, we often know who plays well with others,
absolutely.
right? There are a few nonprofits in town that everyone's like, yeah, they don't really collaborate.
They don't.
Right? But by and large, I mean, if you come with good intentions, you sort of receive good intentions.
I think most of them do.
Yeah.
I mean, again, in the big picture, we all find, because we really want to help people. That's kind of really the kind of what is behind all the work that we do. So I think even though we sometimes disagree on the method or how you do it, we find a way to collaborate. And I also find it's personalities too. I mean, I had better partnerships for certain work, kind of organizations when they had a certain leader.
Yeah.
Than when the leader changed, it wasn't the same. So I think, all of these are factors.
Well, I was going to say the best run organizations are often also quite collaborative because of that leadership,
Absolutely.
right? That leadership sort of makes it happen. So Emily Schreiber wants to know, how does the work that you do benefit from being underneath the umbrella of Catholic Charities, and could you do it without that umbrella? That's a great question.
It's a great question, and actually this is not the first time I'm asked.
Yeah.
For me, I have developed real expertise in this work that I think it's possible to do it on my own. But the truth is, I prefer to be working under the umbrella of Catholic Charities because of the resources they bring. Yeah. I think, they're able to really provide a lot of stability for the staff, like all kinds of things, whether it's the cash flow, whether it's, the resources that you have in the offices, and also they are respected. So they do have good reputation, right. So which I felt always had open door for me. I mean, and it was, I found all kinds, I had a lot of interesting stories, like when I work with, law enforcement, sometimes like ICE, which their role is to deport the clients that I'm right. representing. So of course, the relationship is not very always pleasant, but a lot of them turned out to be Catholic. And I get the royal treatment sometimes, not knowing that they're treating well the Muslim woman. Yeah. But I speak for a big organization that has resources, that has great reputation. So for me, I think, if I would choose first to continue to have it within the resources that are there. Yeah. But at the same time, I think if I had to do it on my own, that might be also exciting.
Yeah. I often think in terms of that umbrella of Catholic Charities, for us, just the name, also working with children, Absolutely. I think sometimes you sort of get that benefit, right, of people Absolutely. Thinking, oh, what you're doing is right and good, and we're gonna work with you.
And the other thing, we have, a whole network of Catholic organizations. We have, even lobbyists. So it's a lot of the work is enhanced, and we're able to do things on a larger scale than if it's somebody working on their own. Yeah.
A. Perez wants to know, can you talk about your experience, especially as it relates to the current presidential election? How difficult has this presidential election made it for you to do your work?
Well, I can answer these questions in two ways. In terms of my work, for instance, it has changed the discourse about immigrants. It has changed the discourse about, refugees, and you have all these myths and fears that are affecting how people, kind of see things. But at the same time, it has created a counter movement of people who are coming. I have met with more families that I can say, or more people who never were interested, who want to come and adopt a family or see what they can do for refugees. So it has worked both ways. But I also can tell you, as somebody who is a Muslim, and we are one of the groups that seems to be targeted, and there is the talk of preventing them from coming in. So I work very closely with the community. I work with the Arab Cultural Center. I work with different Muslim organizations. There is real fear, especially among children. Yeah. A lot of children are asking, will we be able to continue to live here if
they don't want to be sort of ripped out of this situation.
No, they feel that this is their country and they love it, but then they're starting to feel like more of the outsiders. So it has been very unfortunate. And it's, anyway, I think it has affected so many people in so many ways. I keep believing, I'm optimist ultimately. I keep believing in the real principles that the people have, and that ultimately that's what will really kind of win.
Yeah, I have very strong feelings about immigration, and I often reflect on history in the United States. There was a period when there was a whole political party sort of focused on ending immigration, and they called themselves the Know-Nothings, and everyone else called them the Know-Nothings because they didn't seem to know anything, right, in regards to the benefits of immigration.
I mean, thinking of the history of immigration in the U.S., because I taught the immigration course 2 semesters ago at the University of Houston. So I had to teach the history. And throughout the history of immigration, we've had all these, whether they are cases or movements where we excluded people. So like we excluded the Chinese at the beginning, and then the Irish. So I mean, the group that we excluded kept changing. And it's always very interesting for me to see that it happened at times when there was economic problems. I mean, we tend to become more close because, there is this sense that, these new immigrants are coming to take resources.
Right.
But I mean, these 2 forces have always been this welcoming. I mean, everybody mainly is an immigrant in this country.
Pretty much.
If you look,
unless you're an American Indian,
absolutely.
right?
But I mean, of course, depending on how soon, or kind of first generation, 10th generation, whatever it is. So we've always had these 2 competing movements. And that's what has created the change in the laws that has made it even, so it's also kind of made people more aware of safety, because safety is important too, but you have to really kind of balance it with civil rights. I mean, like during the after the September 11, that's what I really sometimes I would talk to myself about. I mean, yes, safety is important. Yes, there is danger, but you have something that is very, very special. You don't want to give the civil rights. I mean, like the first time I had to remove my shoe at an airport. I mean, in our part of the world, wherever you go, you are being searched. So it was here, the idea that I could travel from one state to the other without being searched was amazing. So to me, it was really a setback. It was very sad, honestly, that now we have to do these things.
Yeah.
But
the rest of the world looks like, why are you taking off your shoes?
I know.
So I remember going through customs, I think in Mexico, and they said, no, we're more civilized. You can keep your shoes on. I thought that was very interesting.
I mean, and sometimes they do things that doesn't, law enforcement, I mean, I know they want to do their jobs. Like I remember my brother visited me and his son was 3 years old. He was very excited about his kind of tennis shoes or whatever that had lights in it. They made him remove the shoe. And he was so unhappy, he cried so much. He just felt as if they were taking it. And I was thinking, 3-year-old, get a grip. But anyway, it's...
Exactly. Joel Young wants to know, have you ever, because of your work, witnessed blatant discrimination?
It's not that I witness it, but I see it all the time in the stories that my clients bring. And lots of times that's the basis of them getting asylum or, whatever type of relief, because most of the type of cases we work on are based on humanitarian relief, so discrimination plays a big, big part in it.
Mm-hmm. Enye wants to know, what's the worst thing about managing staff?
Okay. I think the worst thing about managing staff for me, it really has to do with kind of supervision. So it's really, again, I approach these things as I want people to be professionals and for them to really be doing the right things because they need to do it, and it should be based on an honor code. And it works with some, it doesn't work with others. So I always find it's the worst moments for me when I'm faced with somebody who I have to kind of do some corrective action or have to really address their performance issues. I always approach it with the, kind of hoping that they could learn from it. And I have great stories about that. I mean, I had someone who everybody thought she's not performing and she was not doing well. And then, once we met, she was very open. It was clear this was not the right job for her. We were able to change her, and she became one of my stars. So I mean, and I think part of really the way I see leadership is trying to understand the people you work with as they are, meet them where they are, and find the best ways to really inspire them or have them kind of perform and do the work. But sometimes also I find myself, giving rules, so it's...
Well, I find sometimes when you have to micromanage when things aren't going the way they need to go, yeah.
And I mean, I can tell you as a person, I could die if somebody macromanage me. So I hate to do it to anybody, but there are some situations you have to. I mean, so these are the moments that I would say are not what I enjoy doing about my work.
When I sit in groups of nonprofit CEOs, it seems like the two things that people don't like, or where the challenges are staff and board members. It seems like it's sort of an interesting thing.
And I mean, it's especially for the CEO, they really have to find the best way to work with the board. So they are their bosses. It takes a lot of management.
Yeah, you have 40 bosses.
I mean, I think for me, it's the good part about it. I'm not directly, so they're not really my bosses, so I get to see the best part that they do. I mean, kind of how they support and they offer, things.
Yeah.
So.
And most board members are fantastic,
absolutely.
obviously.
No, I agree.
Just every once in a while you have a disruptive one. So Christopher Gilbert has an interesting question. He says he's writing a paper on women in leadership. And do you ever have problems with subordinates or others who don't believe in women leadership roles?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and it is sometimes done in a very kind of, it's indirectly or discreet or, comes across. I had somebody who I promoted for a supervising attorney, and at a general meeting for the whole agency decided to kind of, talk about a challenge that he never discussed with me that undermined, everything I did. And when I tried to talk to him, I just could not understand where he was, coming from.
Yeah.
I think he was thinking, she being a woman, I know better. I mean, that was kind of what this is what his behavior kind of told me, number one. And number two, I think one of the challenges that women have is that if you are very strong, you're aggressive. If a man acts in the same way, they are assertive and he's a leader, but you are aggressive and you are, difficult to work with. So it's kind of finding that balance to still kind of be who I want to be. And I feel that, I'm a strong person and I don't feel that I need to hide it, but sometimes, it becomes kind of a challenge.
Yeah, wow. Aaron Clay has an interesting question. He's wondering, as vice president, can you see yourself being president one day? Could you be the president of Catholic Charities?
I don't think it would be easy for me to be the president of Catholic Charities. I think most of the presidents kind of are Catholic in a way, just because, the nature of the work and, they're they're very connected to the archdiocese and all of that. But I think I can envision myself easily becoming a, kind of a president with a different kind of organization.
Could you go to something that wasn't immigration, because you're such a big part of that world?
To tell you the truth, if I've been thinking a lot about this, lately, just because, for all of us,
you reach a point in your life where
you think about it. So for me, in terms of Houston, I don't think I can find a better job doing immigration, just from all aspects, whether it's the, organization reputation, the number of people I serve, all kinds of things. So in a sense, it's going to be very hard for me to advance and be in the same field. But I don't know if I'm ready to do that. I think it has to have this, work connection with either immigrants or refugees.
Yeah.
And sometimes I also feel like my best, memories of work were when I was actually the attorney arguing in court. So,
Wow.
but somehow, and I never actually wanted to become an administrator at all. That was never in the cards, and it's not something that I looked up to. It just happened because, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just wanted to grow this program. I had a vision for it, and here I found myself. People thought I did a good job, and they would ask me to do this, and here I find myself. And then first I would say no, and then I find myself in the job. So
well, you've really grown it, that's for sure. It's amazing. Is the closest thing outside of Catholic Charities, which is it? Would it be Tahirih, though significantly smaller?
I mean, I would say the closest would be the YMCA International.
Oh yeah, okay.
Just in terms of, the Tahirih is much smaller than them. And they also very specialized. While the YMCA do more the variety that we do, but at a smaller scale. But I mean, but each organization has its unique kind of, special niche or what they do best. And Tahirih also do a lot of pro bono. A lot of their work is done for pro bono. While our kind of the model is more, we do a lot in-house in addition to the pro bono. I would say more in-house than pro bono, just because of the way we've grown.
And this is Abe Perez again, he wanted to know, have you ever considered leaving the nonprofit sector to practice law?
I actually...
And make a lot more money.
Well, it's really funny because my son, when he was a teenager, wanted me to buy him a special car or whatever, which I could not do because of a nonprofit. So he'd always tell me, you need to find a real job. And, I always kind of told him, no job can be as real as mine, to tell you the truth. And I thought after a while, I've always kind of thought of having my own practice just because for the freedom of it or, being able to do what I wanted. There was a time when I'm thinking of it, but now when I consider it, it doesn't seem what I want to do. My approach about money, like everybody else, I like money, it's important. But the way I look at it, do you drive a Toyota or a Mercedes? You can be happy in both.
Do you drive a Toyota?
Well, I drove a Toyota for a very long time. But this is what I wanted to tell you. I still bought the Mercedes. You pay it little by little. That's the difference. Actually, if you are in private practice, maybe you can buy it. I would have bought it maybe, kind of 10 years earlier, it's
still good. It's still working out for you.
I think so.
Well, let me ask you a few fun questions. Your favorite restaurant in Houston?
Well, actually, it is a restaurant now that became very well known, but when I discovered it, very few people. It was the Crawfish and Noodles of all places. And for me, I grew up in Amman, Jordan. We don't have a sea, so it's not that I knew a lot about seafood.
You don't have crawfish or noodles.
I've never seen, crawfish in my life before coming here. It was actually at the professor's, party. They had a picnic that when I first saw the crawfish, and I thought it was really gross. But now I enjoy. It's eating it, and the blue crab is really. There are a lot of other restaurants like sushi ones or the fancy ones I enjoy. But if I want to, think what is it that I really want to go eat, it's that.
That's a great place.
It is a great place.
And there's that little Happy Feet right near there too, where they do the foot massage.
And you know what? I also attracted me to it at the beginning. All the people who worked were students who go to university and they work there. So I don't know. It just felt like it's the right place to be.
Yeah, very good. And do you have a favorite little place in Houston that's maybe not very well known, a little venue, a park or a store, a place that you like?
It's kind of, to me, sometimes shopping is my, kind of what I use to really relax. So that's kind of sometimes when I feel I'm too stressed, I just do that. But to tell you the truth, the place now that I consider to be where I like to be, it's my backyard, which, we kind of have, we moved to a smaller house that had a pool, and I did really, for the first time, I never had time to do that. So now we have all kinds of palm trees and all of that. So just sitting in this backyard, on the chair, reading, my books is, to me, it's really kind of what I love.
By the pool?
By the pool.
That sounds fantastic.
It's kind of, we've decided we don't need a big house and I can't go up the stairs, and so the priority was to have a house with a pool. So,
Very nice.
So that's kind of, to me, it's really the place where I don't know, I mean, I totally relax and, you know.
Okay. And final question, outside of Jordan or Houston, your favorite place in the world?
I would say Rome. I mean, I went there when I was my first year of college. I don't know, it just made such an,
it's a wonderful city.
It's a wonderful city. And I love actually, the old churches. I love I'm coming visiting these things. And the second place that I now find to be fascinating is Istanbul.
Oh, wow.
It's actually, I don't know, it just blends the East and the West. Like we have different views of the world and people seem to be always not agreeing, but you go to Istanbul and it shows you all can live together. It just combines the two in such an amazing way.
I've not spent much time in Istanbul. I need to, I feel like
really,
maybe today is not the day to go, but I mean, it's...
I know, but I mean, things will change, but it's an
will,
amazing city and amazing history too.
Very good. Wafa, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the work that you do here in the community as well.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I always enjoy having, a reason to talk to you.
So, and I love the other day we ran into each other at a party and you said, oh, one of the things I always remember is I think we were at a Sheila Jackson Lee press conference and I said, let's sit in the front row. And you said, those are reserved. I said, yeah, they're reserved for us.
Absolutely. And to tell you the truth, one of the things I have been, since we're talking about leadership, I've always kind of saw my role as doing the work and, just being where I need to be. It's only very recently, and actually that day was an eye-opening for me, is that also it's important to kind of be able to, I don't know how, to position yourself in a way that you are able to lead.
Yeah.
You
project leadership.
You project, and that's something, it didn't come natural, and I think for women it's harder.
I think so, yeah.
I mean, and sometimes I thought, when you have the knowledge, you can sit in the back of the room and becomes the center. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how I approach it. But then I realized that that's not how people think.
No, that isn't how people think. Yeah.
So
right.
That was really, a good lesson from you.
Thank you.
I appreciated it.
Well, welcome. Thank you very much for being here at the Nonprofit Leadership Studio. We're so happy to have welcomed Wafa Abdin here. And we will see you next time on the Nonprofit Leadership Studio. Keep up the great work.